Welcome to the Natural Super Kids podcast, where you will discover practical strategies to inspire you to boost the health and nutrition of your kids. I'm Jessica Donovan, a qualified naturopath specialising in kids' health, and I want to make it as easy as possible for you to raise healthy and happy kids. Let's get into it. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Natural Super Kids podcast. I hope you're doing really well today. I want to give you a bit of a peek into my pantry today, but in audio form. Sounds a bit strange for a podcast, but I thought it would be helpful to run through some of my key pantry staples. So my idea for this episode was to talk about the 5 foods that I always have in my pantry. It's beefed out a little bit to more like the 7 foods that I always have in my pantry. I think it's so important to have a well-stocked pantry and to have those foundational pantry staples so that you can easily whip together a meal or a snack with whatever else you might have. Of course, fresh food is really important, and I'm always focused on seasonal fresh fruits and vegetables. So that changes depending on what season it is, what's available to me locally. I love to shop at the farmers market. I do that most Saturday mornings. But let's put that aside, that fresh food aside for today's episode, and talk about those pantry staples. The great thing about pantry staples is you can stock up on lots of them, and these are the things that I very rarely run out of, and if I do run out of them and haven't restocked them, I can feel very lost because they really are foundational for a lot of meals and snacks and baking and cooking that I do. So the first one is tinned fish. Now, tinned fish, obviously a really good source of protein, a really good source of omega-3 fatty acids and other nutrients such as iodine and zinc are really rich in tinned fish as well. Now, I say tinned fish and not tuna because although we do have tuna in our pantry for sure, my son does like tuna. He will eat a little mini tin of tuna as a snack, which is, good and bad. I think that it's great for the protein and the omega-3s, but tuna can be, is higher in mercury. And so I like to mix up the tinned fish that I use. As I said, yes, we do tuna. Tuna seems to be well liked by everyone, but mixing that up with things like mackerel and sardines and salmon can be really great. I particularly love mackerel because, it is that bit higher in omega-3s and it's lower on the food chain, as are sardines. Sardines are great as well, but they do have that stronger, fishier flavour. So I find mackerel a really good in-between, in terms of between tuna and sardines, more not so fishy, but a little bit more nutrient dense and lower in some of those heavy metals like mercury. When you think about fish, the bigger the fish is, the higher it generally is on the food chain, the more of that, the buildup of, heavy metals and other contaminants that are unfortunately, in the smaller fish and in the ocean. So we don't want to go too crazy on tuna, and a good way to get around that is to mix up the different tinned fish that you buy. The thing that I love about tinned fish is it makes a great, if you don't have any other protein for lunch, it makes a great lunch. I had some mackerel with avocado and some greens just on some crackers yesterday for lunch, really quick and easy lunch. You can obviously make up a salad. You can pop it into a wrap or a roll. So, really versatile. I will often, turn to tinned fish for dinner if I haven't got organized and don't have any protein out, like I will often make like a tuna rice salad. That makes a really good dinner, and then leftovers for lunch, or some sort of tuna pasta always goes down well as well. So tin fish is great. Try and get tin fish that is either in spring water or in an olive oil. The olive oil blends will generally have, some seed oil, sunflower oil, or something like that in them. So if you can try and get them without those oils, just an olive oil, which can be hard to find actually, or a spring water, and then you can mix it in with some olive oil or some good quality mayo yourself. The Good Fish brand is great, a bit more expensive, but if you can mix some of those into the mix when it comes to tin fish, that is great. Tin fish is number one on the foods that I always have in my pantry. The second one is spelt flour. So spelt flour is fantastic because it is very much transferable. That's not really the right word, but you know what I mean, with a wheat flour. So when we're looking at alternative flours, say for example, coconut flour or almond meal, they don't really, they're not transferable in recipes like spelt flour is. So anyway, where you see a wheat flour in a recipe, it can definitely be replaced with a spelt flour in exactly the same quantities. And spelt is more nutritious and it's more digestible than wheat is. It's got a bit of a higher protein content. It's a little bit higher in fiber. It's got more micronutrients, so things like iron, zinc, magnesium. And it's a bit like, it's not gluten-free, but it is lower in gluten than a regular wheat is as well. The other great thing about spelt is it's less processed and fewer chemicals are used within the farming of spelt. It's an ancient grain. It's got a tougher husk and it requires fewer pesticides to grow. So it's a more sustainable, even if you don't choose organic spelt, you're going to get less pesticides, less chemicals with spelt than you are of a general wheat. And I really like the taste and the texture. It's got a slightly nutty sort of flavor, but a lot of kids won't even notice if you use spelt as an alternative to wheat in things like muffins and cookies. So I love baking with spelt flour as an alternative to regular wheat flour. So spelt flour is always in my pantry, and I generally get a mix of white spelt and whole wheat spelt, and we'll use them interchangeably. Well, depending on what I'm baking. Sometimes I might want that lighter, sort of fluffier result with the white spelt. But yeah, I'll often use the whole wheat as well in things like muffins, and sometimes a combination of the two. The third thing I always have in my pantry is nuts. So nuts, I generally will have a variety of nuts. Anyone that's been listening to this episode, this podcast for any length of time will maybe have heard me talk about variety and the benefit of having more variety in our family's diet and the benefit that has on our family nutritionally, but also on their gut microbiome. We know that more variety of plant foods in the diet is really great for microbiome diversity, which is a positive thing all round for our kids' health and our health as well. So I always have a variety of nuts. Almonds are always in there, walnuts, pecans, cashews. What else? Sometimes macadamias, if the budget allows. They're obviously that bit more expensive. And in that, we always have seeds as well. So let's chuck seeds in there as well. We do chia seeds. We have sunflower, pumpkin seeds. We have flax seeds, generally ground up in the fridge. And I love nuts and seeds because they're great to snack on. They're great to add to baking, whether you grind them up and add them into, cookies and muffins, or you keep them whole or you chop them up. They're really a great way to add extra fiber, extra nutrition, extra protein to baking cookies, muffins, that sort of thing. And I also love adding them as a crunch element to meals, salads, stir fries, some cashews over a stir fry, or some almonds or pecans in a salad, or pistachios is another one. Amazing for that textural element, and you're adding some extra nutrition with those as well. So a variety of nuts are always in my pantry. Next one is olive oil. So olive oil is my go-to oil for all uses in the kitchen. Obviously great for salad dressings, or dressings for anything that you might be making. Also great for baking. So anywhere where where there's vegetable oil in a recipe that I might be using, I will replace that with an olive oil. It does have a little bit of a taste, but yeah, it's not too bad, depending on what you're cooking. So olive oil is a great alternative to the, vegetable oils in baking. And I will cook with olive oil quite a lot as well. If I'm shallow frying, or I need sort of a lot of oil and I don't want that olive oil flavor, or I don't want to use olive oil because I'm cooking on a really high heat, I will use ghee as an alternative. So I'm throwing ghee in there as well. I always have some ghee in my pantry. Great for, shallow frying, things like schnitzels or fritters, anything that you might require a bit of extra oil in. Ghee is fantastic. And ghee is basically a clarified butter. So ghee and olive oil are always in my pantry. Well, they're actually generally not in my pantry. They're on my bench. A little bit away from the stove, because we don't want the heat of the stove to be, affecting the quality of our olive oil, over time. So I just sort of store it a little bit away. Next one is herbal teas. I love herbal teas, more in the winter, but even in the summer, I will, sometimes make a big cup of herbal tea and let it cool down and sip on that through the day. I just find real comfort in sipping on herbal tea. I always have some sort of digest blend, that usually will have things like mint and fennel in there. And I love a lemon and ginger as well, but I have a whole variety of herbal teas. They are definitely a go-to for me. In the winter, I live on herbal teas. I'm sipping on them all day, sipping on them all night. It's a way for me to keep warm and hydrated, because I find it hard to drink enough water in the winter. So herbal teas are always in my pantry, and my kids love herbal teas as well. Again, more in the winter. It's sort of a nightly ritual for us to have a herbal tea in the evening. And so even though my kids might not be sitting with me in the evening every night anymore, now that they're sort of older, they're doing their own thing, I love taking them a big mug of herbal tea at the end of the day. Like I said, it's a nice little ritual for us. And yeah, I think it's a nice little habit to get into. It's really lovely for littler kids as well. So many medicinal benefits depending on what the herbal tea is. And yeah, I love a herbal tea. I don't have it straight after dinner, but in the evening to just sort of support the digestion is always nice as well. And lastly, I'm going to lump this one in. Herbs and spices. Dried herbs and spices are such an important part of pantry staples because they add so much flavour. And I prefer, with some exceptions, I do prefer having individual herbs and spices and making up my own blends or different flavours depending on what I'm, making at the time. I think it's a really good way to get a bit more confident with whole food cooking in the kitchen rather than buying, the already blended, like Mexican spice mix or something like that. And also with those blended spice mixes, there's usually fillers and sometimes, often some unfavorable ingredients in there. So making up your own mixes can be really easy. You can look up different, cuisines, for example, if you want to do an Indian curry or you want to do a Mexican inspired or a Cajun sort of flavor, you can, always look those up online. Some of my favorite herbs and spices, the ones we go through a lot, garlic and onion powder, oregano, we all love that. And paprika's another big one, turmeric, cumin, coriander's another big one. There's some that come to mind. And then we have a whole heap of others that probably don't get used as often. But yeah, dried herbs and spices, go for good quality if you can. The Planet Organic brand is really good. I love those ones. There's definitely a difference in terms of the flavor when you can buy those higher quality herbs and spices. And of course, then you can jazz up any sort of meal you are making. You've got some chicken breast, add some spices, fry it up, serve it with a salad or bake it. And you've got a pretty tasty meal. And of course, herbs and spices are essential for things like, stews and curries and, pasta sauces made from scratch. If you've got a really good range of herbs and spices, you can move away from pre-made pasta sauces and things, because you can just go with some tomato passata and add your own, garlic and onion and oregano and all of those sorts of things. And of course, fresh garlic and onion are great, but some nights you might be in a hurry, you might have run out of garlic. And so the garlic and onion powder can be really great for those instances as well. So I hope this has helped you get some fresh ideas in terms of maybe things that you could stock in your pantry, reminded you maybe of some things that you may have run out of and never replaced. I would love to hear what your pantry staples are. Send us a message on Instagram. And we can share some. We might even start a poll and ask you what your your herb and not herb and spice, your pantry staples are, so we can all inspire each other and get some different ideas of things that we can stock in our pantry, because a well-stocked pantry makes it so much easier to stay on track with whole food eating with your family. And that's what we are all about. So I hope that's been helpful. Thank you so much for listening. Have a great day. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. Head on over to our website, naturalsuperkids.com, for the show notes for this episode, as well as a whole heap of inspiration to help you raise healthy and happy kids. I'll see you next week.